Everyone's vision of fundraising is probably Shark Tank. Like you walk into a room, there's some smart people, you talk about your idea for 10 minutes and then they offer you money like on the spot. That is not how this works at all.
Welcome to episode 2 of the CEO Roundtable. We're here at one of my favorite restaurants in the city of Chicago, Shaw's Crab House, thanks to Let Us Entertain You Restaurants. We're talking to 5 great CEOs. They are Danny Wirtz of the Chicago Blackhawks, Emily Groden of Evergreen, Gregg Majewski of Craveworthy Brands, Ashley Thompson of MUSH, and Luke Saunders of Farmer's Fridge. I'm super excited to talk to them. I wanted to thank our sponsors, Wintrust Bank, for presenting this episode, and let's get into it. In fact, I think last time we started, I said, let's dive right in. So let's dive right in. Who's ready?
Ready.
All right. So you're all in food, beverage, hospitality. Gregg and Danny, this is first question for you, and this is a very serious topic, but tariffs and inflation and supply chain woes and labor shortages, these are all real things you all have to deal with. So I'm wondering, how are you navigating your businesses when one day there could be an announcement of a tariff and then the next day it could be pulled back? It just seems like a very turbulent time. So I'm interested in how you all are navigating this as national brands.
I mean, we look at tariffs as, hey, it's part of what the business cycle is going to be now, and I can't worry about it day in and day out. If a price of an ingredient is going to be shot through the roof because of political whatever, it's not going to stay there forever. It is a short-term mechanism, and I'm hoping that it's going to come back to reality at some point. In some parts of the world, in some parts, yeah, there should be tariffs, and the tariffs are going to be a longer fix. But as far as ordering produce from Mexico, I don't think it's going to be a long-term problem. And if it does become a long-term problem, we're going to start sourcing differently. And everywhere else in the world sources differently. You don't eat everything all year. You know, you eat things when it's popular or when it's in season because you get a better cost on it. And we may change to more of that approach with our menus. And that's just the way the business may have to go. But we'll figure it out every day like we have everything else. Since COVID and everything else, we've had to make changes on the fly every day, and this is no different.
Have any of you had similar experiences or pain that you've experienced because of some of the announcements or inflation problems or supply chain woes?
Yeah, I think the uncertainty is the hardest part. I mean, for any business, not being able to plan your business. I'll speak on, behalf of alcohol beverage in particular. For us, it kind of starts with first advocacy. Alcohol beverage sometimes gets lumped into food products and other commodities where there's very specific laws, regulations, and product production that is unique. So tequila only can come from Mexico. Champagne can only come from, the Champagne region of France. Scotch whiskey comes from Scotland. So it's not as though those are going to be moving to the United States to produce their products. So we try to really make sure that differentiation is known by public officials. And then, like anything, we are a distributor, so we sort of sit in the middle between the manufacturer and the retailer. And when those prices go up, we unfortunately do pass those through to the consumer, which then, of course, has all the downstream effects of price increases and consumers trading down to lower priced products and all the disruption that comes from that. So tariffs can be quite disruptive in our industry. And so we try to stay ahead of it through advocacy. And then, of course, through planning with our partners as to what it looks like. So today, as of today, on this date, we are still deciphering what that impact will be. So it just leads to really important planning, projections, and then, of course, making sure your ordering and supply chain and procurement is really on top of its game with our partners to make sure we get ahead of these things. So hopefully the impact to the consumer is less than we hope.
I mean, he brought up pricing, and in the restaurant industry, we have been taking pricing ridiculous amounts for years now. Since COVID, our pricing's continued to go up. And I've been very, very voiceful about the fact that we can't continue to do so. So when grocery store prices go up, they always come back down. Eggs go up, they go down. It just the cost of what happens in the restaurant industry, price goes up, we never go down. We never drop price back. And so as this uncertainty continues to happen, we have to be conscious of the fact that our consumers can't afford anymore. We can't raise prices this time. You can't put a surcharge on and say it's a tariff surcharge. You can't do anything else. You're going to have to find a way to get leaner and more cost effective with what you do without raising your price this time. because the consumers can't take it.
Why can't you lower prices? Like,
Because-
what about the dynamic in the restaurant industry?
The restaurant industry has never done it.
Okay,
I
so
mean,
it's just
so-
precedent.
And once you get it,
expectation.
you're sort of there.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
now we went ahead and we took 2 years ago, we were starting to get customer feedback where people were talking about price. So we introduced a new menu line in all of our brands where we went to lower cost on something and a new price point. We introduced something new to drop our check average.
Yeah.
But I was able to do it, but I dropped $5 per check. Most companies wouldn't do that. We saw the writing on the wall. Last year, our sales sucked because we were down 20, 30% because everyone moved to the cheaper thing. This year, I'm positive transactions and I'm comping. But I took a huge gamble doing it, but I introduced a price point. And now that food cost item, we run great food costs on that. We make money on that. But we changed our whole business model over a year. Most don't think that way.
Ashley, I don't know if you agree, but for a grocery store item, I feel a ton of pressure not to raise prices, right? You can always decrease your price, but raising prices is like the last resort. So with tariffs, for us with waffles, we use a lot of eggs. Eggs have been obviously really tricky this year, but we'll pretty much never raise prices and just take the short-term hit. I've had manufacturers come to me and say, you want to reformulate without eggs? And we're just riding it out because I think things will correct, to Gregg's point. Like, tariffs come and go, price increases come and go. I think the egg situation, hopefully we're coming out the other end. And by the time we would reformulate, eggs prices will be back. So I think you can't, knee-jerk reaction to every increase. You just kind of have to ride it out and be patient.
Yeah, and I agree with Danny. The uncertainty is probably the most challenging because as business owners, you learn how to adapt to change. And in fact, just like in my old trading days at Goldman, now turbulence creates so much opportunity, right? Like traders like volatility in the market. It creates so much opportunity. And it's the same thing for business owners. But when you don't know where we're headed, it's hard to adapt and make an adaptation that is long-term sustainable or is going to be sticky. And you spend a lot of time and energy adapting, but it really can create a lot of opportunity. Even with us, we import ingredients, we export goods to Canada. And that exportation, the potential tax on it or tariff on it could actually create opportunity in our negotiation with our partners up there and create a win-win for everyone. So it's both tricky, it can be exhausting, but it can also create a lot of opportunity. My dad has always told me never let a good crisis go to waste. So like get in there and try to figure out, how do we adapt here and how might we actually end up better than where we are today, which I always think is possible.
So is there any optimism that you all are feeling with today's macroeconomic environment? I mean, all of you are national and some global.
Yeah. I mean, we have stores across the ocean now.
Yeah.
So yes.
So these are real concerns. People have real concerns. I think people are worried, but from a business standpoint, to Ashley's point about taking this as an opportunity, Luke, do you see any optimistic part of this?
I think it's too early. Like there's a lot of uncertainty right now. The volatility, you don't know where it's going to land. It's kind of like those early days of COVID. We're like, are we going back to the office? Are we not? And so everyone kind of freezes planning and just reacts to the short-term issue. And I think longer term, we are a consumer-facing business. We sell products to consumers, and how much of this is going to affect their ability to spend is probably so it's hard to be optimistic about that. Like if you're raising prices through tariffs,
Where does the stop? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's potentially people shift to like a more affordable, better option. We ordered DoorDash the other day from a competing healthy fresh food company, and it was $30 for 2 ounces of steak and like a little bit of vegetables. So there's certainly an opportunity where people would shift down to our version of that, which is like $10, but it's really too soon to see that. And I don't know that that's like it's hard to predict if that would be a net positive overall.
And I think in this industry, in any industry, you've always got to be optimistic. If you're not, and there's not always good that comes from everything. And if you're smart enough to take advantage of what's going on around you, there's an opportunity to grow your business at a faster rate during downtimes. In my case, I may find 3 or 4 brands that did not plan accordingly that I can get for a cheaper price than I did before and grow my business and my portfolio. My blue collar neighborhoods may come back quicker because they may go back to work and get increases in pay because their factories get more jobs and everything else coming in. And so they may have disposable income. This tariffs will hurt, if anything, white collared more than it's going to hurt blue collared America. And if that works, restaurants should benefit from it because those are the ones that have been sitting on the sidelines forever. You know, those are the ones that have pulled out of the market and are not going out to eat as much or not buying a bottle of liquor and stuff like that because they're hurting. If they stop hurting because of whatever's coming, we may see a rebound in areas we didn't expect. And now we just have to wait it out. But you got to be optimistic about the opportunity and look every avenue of where you can grow.
I love it. What about AI? Luke, I'm going back to you. AI and technology, how is that changing the food and beverage world, and how are you implementing it in your business?
I mean, there's really two areas where it's really helping right now. One is engineering efficiency. So like tools that help our engineers do code faster. And so if you look at like, you could be like, I want to make an app and type, like, give me the code and create an app. So your engineers that actually really understand that can be 30, 40% more productive, and we can put out a better technology product, be more efficient operationally. And then on demand planning. So we're looking at an equation that we have 2,000 locations, there's 34 slots, there's 35 products, and then you have to figure out where you're sending everything every day, and you got to time that with drivers and production scheduling and the price that you're charging. So there's too many elements to have a human being do that in a spreadsheet. So we're really trying to figure out how to get AI tools involved so that you could do that in a more automated way, so you're not scaling up people to do that process. So I think from my perspective, it's a huge productivity boost. Since your point, like, you know, you don't know what's happening on the other side. So there's tariffs, but there's also this technology change that is hugely impactful.
Yeah.
But yeah, like if there's a bunch of people that buy a salad at work right now and then they don't need to go to work anymore because an AI replaced their job, like you kind of just have to do your job and hope that you're staying competitive and not getting too worried about everything along the way.
How else is anyone else seeing technology or artificial intelligence or any tools that are being implemented in your businesses that are becoming more of a game changer?
I use ChatGPT every single day,
I do too.
multiple times
Yeah.
a day.
And
it's
talk to it.
Yeah. Oh, I do too.
You need friends with it.
New-
Sometimes, how are you, by the way?
Yeah.
Have you learned who I am yet?
Yeah.
But it's just a massive productivity boost. And then there are other things like Mosaic, where if we might, start looking at different companies and M&A. And so how do you build an LBO model? You can literally put in a company's information, and Mosaic will spit out the entire model for you to understand what price you might want to pay based on what returns you think you want to get. So it's just a massive lever. It just provides so much leverage, either in the form of you don't need to have as many people, or it just does things way faster. Like no matter what, I can't write a job description as quickly as ChatGPT can, and I have to write a lot of job descriptions. And where the value is in my seat is the design of things, not the then writing things down and making sure it's nice, neat, grammatically correct, sounds really great and very clear. So I use it all the time. I encourage everyone on my team to use it. Some are a little bit slower to adapt, but most people have really found it to be one of the most incredible tools. And it's not going anywhere. So if you don't adapt to that, you will be left behind. Like that is for sure.
Gregg, I'm interested in your answer because you have physical locations, and I'm seeing more kiosks and everything at restaurants. How do you adapt to that? How are your restaurants implementing these tools?
So I don't think the AI should ever take the hospitality part out of hospitality. So you can put the kiosks up, but you still got to man it and have someone there to sort of walk people through and educate and answer questions. As long as you're in front of it and still provide a level of hospitality, adding that component to it is great. I don't think AI should be the one taking the voice orders of online orders and stuff like that, because you lose that feel of ordering your local restaurant. And people like talking to people. If they're going to pick up the phone and call, they still want to talk to somebody. Otherwise, they're going to go to online and place the order and not talk to anyone. So if you still have a customer that takes the time to call the restaurant, it shouldn't be routed somewhere and an AI take that. They want to talk to someone. That's why they're doing it. And coming into the restaurant, the only thing that makes us any different than what you can do at home is hospitality. You can go and make a sandwich cheaper. You can go and make the meal cheaper. Yeah, it may take some time, but all of that is easier. You go out because of the ease, what you're getting, and that level of hospitality that you get when you walk into the restaurant. So the restaurants can't take that out of there. Otherwise, we're no different than anything else. And then when I talk to other CEOs and everyone, we're all trying to find ways to cut costs. And some restaurants have moved so far into it, you're seeing them lose that feel and love of what. And we're sitting in a great dining room. Imagine if robots took your order, or you had to order at a kiosk in this restaurant. You would be pissed off paying the price that you are for that service. We can't do that.
You three are founders of companies that are really leaning into like a healthy food trend. So what inspired you to do this? I'm directing this to you right now, Emily. But what inspired you to start your companies? But then also on top of that, I'm interested in your thoughts on the trends in our world of food.
Yeah, making waffles was not my life's plan. I was a lawyer, but then I had kids. And when my now 6-year-old, which is wild, was born, I was a working mom and aspired to make everything for her from scratch, knew I wasn't going to have the time or the energy to do so. So I went looking for a quick, convenient solution that I could always have on hand. And frozen waffles seemed like an obvious option that checked all those boxes. But when I went looking for a better for you version of the yellow box that everybody knows, they all were kind of like that yellow box, just in healthier looking packaging. The ingredients were pretty much the same. And so rather than settle, decided I was going to do a hybrid approach, bought a mini waffle iron, started making big batches on the weekends, sticking them in a Ziploc bag and putting them in my freezer. And over about the course of a year, watching my own family devour them, everyone from me to my husband to my little one, and realizing how much easier it truly made my life, I was like, I can't possibly be the only one who wants a truly better option like this. And so set out on this journey to try to figure out how do you get an item on a grocery store shelf, which the two of you know well.
How is that experience trying to get an item on a grocery, like these big retail, like I heard you talking about it prior to this interview, but how is that?
So we started very intentionally not trying to do that. That was the point of the vending machine, was to control our own destiny and not deal with a retailer or a restaurant or anybody else. And the only reason we even went into retail as soon as we did was because of the pandemic and a need to expand our revenue into channels where the consumers were. But retail, I'm the wrong person to ask, because I kind of tell the team, like, I hate retail. I think it's terrible. Like, you're dealing with a lot of people's opinions, and you're fighting for shelf space, and the timing is very uncertain and very slow. It happens like once a year. So I like our fridges even more now that I'm in retail, because it's such a challenging industry to navigate, and you don't have as much control as you would want.
Don't forget to turn to your camera and be like, but I love my partners.
I do. I love the partners. I mean, no, it's
so rather than dealing with retail, you created your own route to market, which is not so insignificant either.
Yeah, I mean, there's other challenges that come with that, right? There's CapEx and a sales team and things that we had to solve. Yeah. But especially, like, we do our own manufacturing, so the key thing is trying to not like build so much capacity in your manufacturing that you can't fill. And what happens with retail is you end up in a position where you can get a lot of revenue very quickly, but you might not get it for 2 years. It's very hard to predict versus, we put 15 to 20 new fridges online every week, and we can plan for that demand, and then the retail becomes kind of a bonus. But I try to convince every single retailer to put in a fridge, and they so far don't take me up on it. But it's definitely, it helps for our business model to be able to have that certainty of growth is actually more important than the huge fast growth.
It's and I'm curious Ashley's thoughts on this too, but as we'd say in this industry, it's much easier to get on shelf than to stay on shelf. Once you get on shelf, and we have kind of newer, innovative items that retail buyers are really excited by, so they'll give you a shot on shelf, but then you have to perform like fast, like sometimes like 12, 16.
It's a ground game too, right? Like, you have salespeople that are trying to compete for shelf space and relationships at each specific store. Because that's what I remember from the alcohol sales that I did with the distributors. Like, that was a thing, working with the owners of stores or retailers to try and get like this package here or this display here. So That's a tough game to play against some of the brands that you all are competing against.
Extremely.
Sorry.
And you win or lose in store. Like over 50% of consumers discover brands in store still. But it's really hard to discover a new brand if you are top right corner with 3 little units next to one another versus like you walk in and Cheerios has a huge display and it's right there for people to discover. Yeah, but I agree. My experience has been it's so much easier to talk your way onto the shelf, and it's much harder to get household penetration to the point where and repeat to the point where you're flying off shelves and now the retailer's actually coming to you asking what other products do you have, how can I expand you, which is ultimately what you want. You just want to keep building the brand in store, either where you are or in other parts, so that the probability of a new consumer discovering your brand goes up. But it's a really hard, long, slow, arduous game. And I think that's probably something I underestimated, my likeness for the yearly review that comes around. I think it's hard sometimes, like when you think about sales strategy, you're an offensive coordinator and you call a play and then you want to, like, you know, in football, you call a play, you want to see the play and then you know, oh, that play doesn't work, I'm going to call a new play. Sometimes we'll call a play, realize it doesn't work, but have to wait a year to call a new play. And that's incredibly frustrating as a business owner who just wants to adapt all day long and iterate and find a new way of doing business. So it's a real challenge. And there are some great retail partners who will move quickly with you. And the bigger you get, the more attention they give to you. So I learned, you know, recently Chobani, one of the biggest players in one of the categories we play in, they don't yearly plan, they quarterly plan with their retail partners because they're so big. So they can call plays much faster, but you have to earn that based on size. Like they only have so much attention and energy they give.
The big players,
Of course. Like if Chobani's down, their whole category's down because Chobani's more than half the category. But if MUSH is down, you know, quarter over quarter, or, you know, year ago, you know, they might not even realize it until the review comes up and they say, hey, what happened here? Well, you didn't run 2 of our promotions that we had last year. It hurt us way more than it hurt you, et cetera. So retail's a challenge, but it's also, you do get size very quickly. I mean, you can turn on Costco and you can add $30 million to your top line in a matter of a year, which it's hard to do building, you know, refrigerator by refrigerator, but everything has its pros and cons. There's no right or wrong way of doing it.
Exactly. And it's like we also have a DSD network that we have to support. So like we're going into the store every time we add a store, it's a much bigger investment versus, you know, buy the inventory, ship it to the retailer, no problem. But for us, it's like, it has to be a partnership. And that's what's really challenging is it's not, retail isn't set up that way. So we come in, we're like, we're going to do everything differently. We're going to deliver, we're going to stock shelves. So it just makes it a different dynamic.
And your model is unreal because you produce it and then you have to go and stock the shelves or stock your machines all the time. Yeah. I mean, yours is the hardest one out of any of them.
Yeah. Your trucks too, right?
Yeah, I mean, we only have a few days to sell it, so we have to.
Didn't you do deliveries early on too? Can you tell us a little bit of that hustle founder mode that you were?
I did deliveries early on. I chopped the lettuce. I did all the things. The delivery job was actually the one I wanted to get rid of the fastest. It's super challenging, and I'd say to those guys a huge thank you like every time I see them. But yeah, it was we would make all the food at like 4 a.m, and then I'd drive it to the Garvey food court and fill the machine, and then I'd sit there all day and do the work and talk to customers and kind of repeat. But yeah, it's definitely, we have over 150 drivers across the country doing 8,000 stops a week.
Danny, in that same vein, what's the hardest thing, and everyone else chime in with their experiences as a CEO and business leader, but what's the hardest lesson you've learned as a CEO?
One hardest lesson? I mean, what time is it? I'm about to learn one probably in a matter of hours, right? I don't even know if I can pick one. I just know that you have to be in a constant state of learning and trying to improve. Take the realities of the job. I mean, what they say, it all rolls downhill, uphill, but whatever it is, it ends up on your plate as the CEO. You have to deal with sometimes the smallest of issues, the largest of issues, and the conflict that comes with business. And I think that's one of the hardest things. I've probably learned a lot about balance. I've learned a lot about picking battles because, I liken sort of the CEO as you're sort of a conductor of an orchestra. One, you can't go play all the instruments for your team. And at any one time, there might be a little issue over here in that section or that section, and you're just trying to keep the music going. And so there's some times where you have to let the violin, go off the rails a little bit because the rest of it has to come together. And it's just, it's managing chaos on a daily basis. And depending on the industry that whatever hat I'm wearing at the time, sports and entertainment is also really interesting in that
sports are cutthroat.
You have the job of a CEO, and then you have the public that thinks that they should have your job. So, and think you can do your job better. And probably many could, but it's, you deal with the sort of public pressure of that. And there's obviously public CEOs that have to deal with that pressure. It's fun to sort of shift into the B2B world at Breakthru and distribution, where you actually have just the realities of what's in front of you without the public pressure. So, that's kind of lessons learned between two industries. One's more consumer and fan facing, and the other is more B2B. But boy, I think you just have to be open to those lessons every day and try to improve.
Greg, give me something that really stuck out for you.
It's that you're going to fail. You're going to fail repeatedly at your job, and you're going to have an idea and it's not going to work. And how fast can you pivot from it and learn from it? And most of us that get to the spot of a CEO, you're not used to failing. We've built our lives on always being the best or out working and out hustling. And when you finally get kicked in the teeth,
maybe not failing so much.
Right.
I feel like there's a frequency here that is unparalleled to any other period of my life.
But you got to learn and pivot faster. So many people, when they go through stuff or a struggle, they stop. We can't, and you have to learn how to keep fighting through. Your company can't have you stop because you had a bad day or something didn't go right. And that was I learned that lesson early at Jimmy John's. I was 21 and, got my first experience of a store not performing and Jimmy yelling and screaming at me because we spent all this money on this drive-thru store and yet no one was coming through our drive-thru. Oh, I was 21 years old. How am I going to fix it? And it was our idea to take the store, and we went down there and we stood on the sign with billboards saying we had a drive-thru to start getting people to come through the store. Something so stupid. That's all I knew how to do. But I was scared to death because I was failing. And you just got to learn to keep plowing through.
What do you got for me, Emily?
Yeah, no, I have many thoughts, but I agree with Greg. And I sometimes, or whenever I'm fundraising, I think about, I put myself in the VC shoes and what would I look for in a company? And I've decided that I would look for two things. One, strong velocities, which in our lingo is how quickly you're moving off shelf in store, right? You got to see a base that, if not, where you want it to be, ultimately is somewhere you can grow from. But two, just the grit of the founder, because it is still so hard. And every day there are high highs and low lows. I also feel like for me, there's always each day when I have a really high high, it's always followed right afterwards by a low low. I'm like, really? You couldn't give me a few hours to sit here and be thrilled? But yeah, no, it's a tough slog, and my skin has gotten a lot thicker over the last few years, that's for sure.
And the fundraising failures are continual. I have not been told no so many times in my life.
So many times.
It's completely devastating. First time you get told no, it's really? My idea is wonderful.
This is gold.
And they're like, no, we're not interested. And you get told that. You get told more no's than you ever get told yes when you're fundraising. And it's so hard to take that feedback because they don't get what your vision is. And your vision can't change because an investor thinks of something different. You got to stay focused on what your vision is to continue to grow. And eventually you'll find that partner to grow with. But man, you just get beat up through that process.
And by the 100th no, it's hard not to start to sit there and think is my idea a bad idea? But again, it goes back to the grit of the founder. You gotta really believe, and no matter what punches are thrown your way, just keep running through that wall.
Luke was on the CEO series. Same with Danny. Just an FYI, CEO series, great series, best CEO. content machine out there. But what's a misconception about fundraising that that people don't know or aren't aware of? Because I believe I asked you in that episode, it was like when you fundraise, you were on Shark Tank.
Yeah.
Everyone's really excited about that. Everyone's really excited when you raise a bunch of money for your company. But there's a reality to that too.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say that's kind of the everyone's version, like vision of fundraising is probably Shark Tank. Like you walk into a room, there's some smart people, you talk about your idea for 10 minutes and then they offer you money like on the spot. That is not how this works at all. So first
That sounds great.
no, like I was like really disappointed. I had the first meeting because I had never raised money before I started this business. I'd been in small businesses, we bootstrapped, or we had you had cash in the bank and had to make money, and realized, okay, if I want to keep doing this, we're gonna have to raise money. And I had the first like fundraising meeting that somebody else set up, and I was like really surprised that they didn't like tell me no or offer me money like on the spot. It was like this.
It's like
is
a
really,
real-time negotiation.
yeah, I was like, this is really anticlimactic. And how do you do this the right way? And someone actually like gave me a book to read about it, and it's like, well, here's how this actually works. And it's really like you build a presentation, you network your way into hundreds of people, you get hundreds of no's, and if you're lucky, like 1 or 2 yeses. And it's just it's like a 6 to 12 month exercise where you're constantly being told your business isn't investable, or maybe it's just not the right fit for that investor, but you're trying to run your company and stay focused on that long-term vision while you're having a lot of people poke holes in fundamentally like what you're working on.
Day in and day out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always like you're not cash flowing yet, you're too early. Well, of course I'm too early, or I'm not cash flowing, I'm 1 year old. I'm not going to be cash flowing yet.
Yeah.
But it's their easy answer to say, okay, get out.
In a high growth company, like that's very hard to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, you're adding 800 restaurants or something over 5 years. Like most companies can't like double their footprint and make money in a high CapEx business. So you're like, well, that's why we're here talking. I need to raise money because I have this ambitious plan. So that has gotten a lot harder, I think, over the last 5 years too.
I have so many thoughts on common misconceptions of fundraising. One of the biggest is that most people think the higher the valuation and the more money you get, the better off the company is. And yes, resources are great for companies, but also when resources are plentiful, I believe that constraints in resources can breed a lot of creativity and build the right kind of business for what you're doing and what you're selling, what you're making. And I've seen so many terrible instances where founders raise so much money off of huge ideas, and then the business doesn't actually fit that kind of that size of check, and they end up with nothing, because at the end of the day, who gets paid first is the investors. So if your business doesn't sell for more than what you've raised to date, you don't get anything. So it really does depend on a lot of factors. Also, there can be so much structure. What makes the headlines is a $100 million check at $1 billion valuation. What people don't know is there could be what's called a 3x liquidation preference on that, where an investor now has to get paid out $300 million on that 100 that they've invested at time of sale. People don't know about who is investing and how much that can really influence the trajectory of the company. The cap table is so important. People who have a seat around the table at the board level, who are making conversation to make the most important decisions of the business, it's so incredibly important. I think fundraising is glorified in the United States to an unhealthy level. And in fact, like some of the best businesses are the most capital efficient, and they don't need other people's money. If I had to do it again, I would not take anyone's money ever. I would control my own destiny. It's so much better to operate a business with one central source of truth. Having like a board of directors around to sense check the person, but with one vision, one central source of truth, going in one direction. So I could go on for days about fundraising, but I'll stop there. I do have one trick though on how to get a check on the spot, because we really did get a check on the spot on Shark Tank, and then my next raise we got a check on the spot too.
And remind us,
Here's
who
my trick.
is your shark?
Mark Cuban.
There we go.
Who's
Okay.
amazing. He's a wonderful guy. He's really great. Good businessman. Really smart.
Cuban, Mark Cuban. This is our second roundtable episode, and we've had 2 Mark Cuban. We got to get him on here. I mean, what the
we
hell?
could get him here.
Yeah.
We'll
we'll
call him
save
up.
that. Yeah, we'll save that for later.
Yeah.
But
so long as I can come back, be part of that conversation. Okay, so my trick is don't ask for money, ask for advice. Both times on Shark Tank, they don't show you everything, but on Shark Tank, we asked for advice from the sharks, and I think that played a huge part in their understanding of our humility and our curiosity and our ability to learn as people, first and foremost, who will then make good decisions on for the business, which ultimately leads to creating value. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about. It's just decision making, problem solving, and then so my second check that came, I also asked for advice. I actually wasn't even fundraising. I asked for advice, and they asked if they could invest. So I had pattern recognition right then and there. I was like, what if I just keep asking people advice while I keep getting checks like this? And it came to a stop at one point where, as you get bigger and the checks get a lot bigger, and the risk gets, is still massive. There's a lot more that goes into the process, to Luke's point. But yeah, I would say for early stage founders, investors are betting on you, not your idea or your execution, your ability to execute, because there's no evidence that you can. So by asking for advice, I think it tells a lot to investors who are bright and know that, curiosity and learning are components. Yeah.
Relatedly, talking to investors when you don't actually need their money in that moment goes a long way, because if you can build a real relationship when your back's not in the corner and you don't need something from them, then it's a much better start for that story than going straight in and asking for money, to your point. So similar to asking.
And it's also okay to say no. So you're
to the investor.
You're interviewing them to be your partner.
Yeah.
And so it's, even though you may need cash more than you ever needed in your life, taking it is the wrong thing if it's the wrong partner. So say no. We walked away from deals that would have set me up and never need money again, but I just didn't like the group. It's not the right move. Say no. Find the people that are right to believe in you and where you want to go, and gives you the ability to grow the company and your vision. As a founder and as someone raising, it's your vision. You don't want someone to come in that then handcuffs you to do what you don't want to do to grow the business.
You're acquiring businesses. Who else has acquired or their businesses looking to acquire generally?
So,
somewhat, yeah.
What? Sorry. Hi. That's it. No. What are you look for when you're looking for companies to acquire? What are some of the things that you're doing to screen these companies? Not just like a good partnership fit, but what are some of the things you both look for when you're looking to acquire businesses? I mean, because that's a completely different ballgame than fundraising. Now you're starting to look at different opportunities, growing your business at a faster rate. So I'm interested in what you all look for and how that impacts your business that you are operating.
I mean, we look for white space in a territory. So somewhere that I can go and compete against someone that has already done it. So when we get into the Mediterranean spot, Cava is the big boy. No one wants to go against the big boy. Well, I do, because they've already taken the entire country by storm and have educated the consumer on this food. I know I can grow a brand to be number 2 or 3 in that segment and make a lot of money on it. So I went out looking for brands that would allow me to be the 2 or 3. Same thing we did at Jimmy John's. We never thought we would be number 1. Subway was number 1. Never going to count them in unit count. We could be the number 2 sandwich concept and make a killing for our franchisees. Grow to that point. We're following that sort of same philosophy here, is trying to find those niches that I could go and be the number 2 or 3 brand out there. And so we're scouring, and then sometimes deals just fall on your table. I mean, the big chicken deal was an example. You get on their board because they're friends and you're trying to help them, and all of a sudden you're taking the managing partner and owning just because it worked. Sometimes you're not even looking for the next deal when you're in this type of position. They come to you, and you have to go ahead and move fast. And then the economy is going to be the next dictator. There's some incredible companies out there that just have made bad bets. that you have to be able to quickly move and get into them because it's the right opportunity. We bought a company for $1. On a Thursday night, they called and they were going to shut their doors. I'm like, whoa, wait, give me 3 hours. Let me come to you. It was like 2:30 in the morning. I'm pitching their board on how I'm going to take the company. I'll take all their liabilities. I'll take everything. I bought it for $1. Kept it underneath in a shell. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I'll close the thing. I'll bankrupt it. No big deal. But you got to be able to be nimble and gamble. And, now it's $1. 8 months later, we brought 15 points to the bottom line. Cash flowing at store level. It was a great investment for me. It's going to be my best investment ever. I bought it for $1, but you have to be quick.
Yeah, our acquisitions are probably in beverage alcohol and distribution, consolidating industry. We're down to majority of the industry is going through a handful of players in wine and spirits. So being one of the acquirers is it's a great position to be in, but you got to be really selective still. We're looking for scale. We're looking to grow in markets. It's a market by market sort of system. So we acquired a company in California to enter that market. Not only for the financial upside, but the strategic value that a market like California brings to our footprint. So those are all things you look for. Of course, you're looking for synergies, you're looking for a portfolio play. But it's an industry that very quickly, if you start to run to fill in the map, you can go upside down pretty quickly. So you got to move. Being the wholesaler, we have to move with our partners. So you have to get supplier support. You have to have the right retail approach. So it's a important role to play in our industry, but we're sort of aggressive, but also very methodical about it.
Is it overwhelming to acquire a business in a different region and there's a different culture within that business and there's a lot of people there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, what thoughts are going through your head? Because then you elaborate.
And that is, and so if you're a regular acquirer, especially if you're rolling things into your own company and brand, you are thinking about that muscle of acquisition and kind of transition. So I think we've built a little bit of a muscle. So teams that go in and start to assimilate quickly, you got to move pretty quick. On one hand, you want to respect the culture, you want to make sure you get the best of everyone who's there, but the longer you kind of draw out and have almost like two competing cultures, it's very hard. So we've taken more of an approach of, you rip the Band-Aid off on a lot of your systems and things like that. You start to assimilate the people really quickly and you start to get everyone on the same kind of platform right away. So I think that's become better with each of our acquisitions. And of course, with every acquisition, learning what you did right, what you would have done better. And so hopefully it's a muscle you get better with each deal.
I mean, it's the hardest thing, especially in the restaurant space, because you have the restaurant level and then you have the above store. Above store is pretty quick to change over and get our culture in, but that store level takes forever. And you don't want to change that DNA because that's why we're interested in the brand. So we have to go in and learn what they do and that culture before I even touch anything or make any changes there. Above store, I'm not going to, the CEO's typically going to be out the door immediately because I just don't need another CEO and we can cut costs and stuff like that. That culture changes day one. But at store level, we don't start making any changes until we know what we're doing, understand how they're operating, and then we look for improvements. And because if you do it too fast, and I've done that, they're going to fight you and the customer is going to fight you because you haven't listened to what the consumer does. You don't really know yet.
Couple of questions. We have a few more minutes, I believe, but to you, Ashley, and to everyone, I want to know, we're getting more into the human side of being a CEO. I'm closing the book. Very exciting. Yeah. I don't even know what I'm going to ask. What has been, for all of you, but Ashley can start out, has there been a detrimental moment at the time that it happened where you were like, oh God, how am I going to continue? And then now looking back, you're saying to yourself, I'm really thankful that happened. It was still detrimental and I wish it didn't happen, but what, have you had a moment like that? I've had a few moments like that myself and my brother, so I'm interested if you all have experienced that. It feels heavy in the moment, but maybe you've pivoted and changed and evolved.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there are so many moments when in the moment it feels like the worst thing that could have just happened to you. But coming out of the moment, processing the moment, moving through it, it sometimes is the best thing that's could have ever happened to you as well, because it it's forced you to pivot or change in some way. And the phrase I always go to when I find myself in those moments trying to calm myself down is the outcome's not the outcome. I think it's a Chinese proverb, but when something happens, it's not the final thing that will ever happen. There's always the next hour, the next day, the next year. And so long as you can stay calm and work through it, there's always possibility. There's always optimism on the other side of it. So to give an example, we get a call, Costco wants to take our product. At the time, we didn't have the right certifications in our facility, and we were also outgrowing it, and we couldn't produce for Costco. So amazing, great outcome. We've got Costco. Let's co-man. So let's co-manufacture our product. They have all the audits. They have everything we need, capacity, et cetera. So we get Costco, highlight. We go to the co-man, low light. Horrible experience for us for a number of reasons that I won't get into. And at one point, we had a really bad mishap where we had to voluntarily withdraw product. It wasn't unsafe, but it was spoiling early. And it was a result of some of the practices that were taking place at this co-manufacturer. And it felt, I mean, first voluntary withdrawal for a brand, it felt like we were dying. Like so many customers upset about, you know, lactic acid kind of fermented product. And it was like a gut punch, especially as a founder who's so emotionally tied to this brand, like having birthed it literally. And so it was horrible and so detrimental to like my first and foremost emotional well-being. And then followed by, you know, the brand, consumers, it was a really tough situation. And what it did was through that process, it forced me and my partner to take a step back and think about like, what are we doing here? What do we want in the long run? And it was that moment that led to the decision to take manufacturing back in-house, which was one of the best decisions we've ever made. And we're so grateful. And it kicked off one of the longest and most arduous processes to get manufacturing up and running, especially at that size and stage. But it changed the course of our business. We were able to cut our retail price in half, which was something that we wanted to do. Wanted to make our product more everyday affordable. It's oatmeal at the end of the day. We want people eating it every single day, and we were able to do that.
You have good protein bars too, though. I just tried.
Yeah, we do. We
now
have protein bars, oatmeal smoothies, a lot of new products, which is really exciting. But yeah, so the outcome's never the outcome. There's always the next move and a new outcome. I think the only certain outcome is death, as far as I know. And
For sure.
other than that, life keeps going. So yeah.
Who else has had an experience where in the moment it was just absolutely awful, and then someone give me some juice?
I will. Yeah, so many. Which one to choose? Years ago, so this was 3 years ago now, I got a call from our first major national account that they were going to discontinue us. I was the only employee of the company still at the time, and it was our first national launch. I had no idea how to support it. So this was now in hindsight not surprising at all. As we discussed earlier, it's much easier to get on a shelf than to stay on a shelf. But I'll never forget, I was supposed to be at a birthday party and an exercise class, and instead of doing that, I was pacing outside with talking to the buyer on the phone and basically told her, like, you can't do this. Like, you can take down our SKUs from 4 to 2, you can take down our store count, but you cannot discontinue us. You got to keep us in and give me a chance to rebuild this. And somehow I convinced her. She slashed our stores in half, slashed our SKUs in half. But it was the biggest lesson for a number of reasons. One, again, we talked about grit. Like, you as a founder need to be prepared to defend your brand and fight for it. 2, I learned how you support a brand in retail. It was a huge wake-up call. Like, you can't just launch a brand in a national retailer. You need to have a marketing plan. You need to have a merchandising plan. You need to have all sorts of levers that you're pulling to make sure that people are going into that store looking for you and pulling you off the shelf. And then 3, we also talked about the challenges of retail and standing out on shelf. It spurred this decision to rebrand our product, which we did a little over a year ago. And that has totally changed the course of our trajectory. We went from these white bags that frankly kind of blended in with the rest of the frozen waffle set to these really bright bags that stand out. And I am happy to say that today we are the top performing waffle in that national retailer. We are back with 4 SKUs. We're nationwide. And so we went like this. But
I just
now,
bought some.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But we
Keeping those
appreciate
velocities
everything.
up.
I think
really
I've before this I was like, I'm gonna experience all your businesses in some way, so I did. Just an FYI. So you're welcome to all of you. Yeah, I've got Farmers Fridge.
They're great
Gone to the
waffles.
Blackhawks game and some of the
7,000 SKUs of liquor.
Yeah, 7,000, all of them. I got your products and I went to Bud Long next to my house. So.
But just to tie this with a bow, it gave me a game plan for how we now launch in every retailer, and I will never launch in a retailer unprepared ever again.
So, I mean, mine came during COVID. I remember laying on my couch in tears because I didn't know how I was going to keep people employed. And I cashed out everything that I had. And I told my family that we would probably be homeless and that I can rebuild and they can't. My employees can't. We cashed out everything we had, every stock, every investment, everything that I did. And I paid everybody exactly what they paid for a year out of my pocket. And even though they weren't making what they were because you weren't there. And I remember looking at my son, telling him, hey, we're going to have to take a loan for college, where I had it all put away, but I stole his money. And in the end, we came out way better because I started Craveworthy and we did everything and everything rebuilds. But again, I knew I could. But at that moment, I had no clue what we were going to do. Everything was sort of put to the side. And that's just what the leader is supposed to do. You found a way to survive and rechange. You fixed your manufacturing, grew. I grew my company 1,000 times in that amount of time. But we figure out ways to get through it. And that's the hardest part about being in our seat. The people that make this tend to have to go through a lot of crap to get to where they need to go. And most people that become founders or CEOs, the ones that don't become a founder and go through it, they tend not to know how hard it is to fight. And that's when you see a company lose its way, is when they put someone in that spot afterwards. Very few CEOs that come into that next generation grow it. It's usually then 2 or 3 down that then rebuild it and start the momentum again once they lose the founder. And you just got to continue to grit and grind.
That is the hardest part, is just, I've always liked to solve problems. Like, I studied math in college, love a good problem set. But the amount of problems and the complexity of the problems and the human nature of the problems and the uncertainty and there's no right or wrong to this decision, and we don't know what might happen if we do this. It's nonstop, and it can just be really draining. I'm into this almost 10 years now, and it's every day nonstop. So tough to prepare for, but just a reality to the seat that you're in. And hopefully you have a lot of people around you who are super supportive and can help you through those problem solving challenges. But it's really challenging.
Now imagine his case where he has 8 million Blackhawks fans that have to yell at him every day. Like, no thank you.
Well, you mentioned earlier balance and trying to almost center yourself and picking the battles you want to pick. It's one on our last episode, Brian Barnes, he said you have 100 problems constantly put in your face and you have to pick 3 of them.
Yeah, you're right.
And that's it.
It's like a sinking ship, and
And
it's
it
like,
sucks
which
'cause-
hole's the biggest right now? Let me go there.
The little
Hopefully
Dutch
this thing
boy in the
doesn't
dam.
cause-
Whatever the analogy is so true. We dealt, so one other crisis, so there's the business crisis is something happens in your business. And then sometimes, when there's a mistake made and there's a PR crisis, a crisis that we dealt with as an organization, that is a real, almost existential gut punch. Because now you're dealing with more than just moving levers in the business. You're talking about trust. You're talking about culture, people, leadership. And especially, the big learning for me was trust. And I think, first of all, people in your organization need to trust you as an employee. And then if you're in the consumer goods, business, or if you're in a fandom business, fans have to trust you, which can sometimes be almost unrecoverable. So, these crises then build this resilience, they build new muscles, and they force you to have to sort of rethink everything sometimes. And so in our case, we truly did that. And not a day goes by that I don't have to think about the world through the lens of what we went through, but at the same time, don't let it become an anchor to pull you down from what you need to do, just to keep moving forward. You know, the sun rises. I remember the next morning after dealing with a really hard day, I looked out at the sunshine on the west side and I said, well, you know, we got to go tackle what we got today. So those are the things, and you know, that sits sometimes above and beyond the sort of everyday headaches that we deal with. So yeah, the joy of sports.
It can take years and years to build trust and reputation, and seconds to ruin it. Like
Absolutely.
truly, like one announcement and it's just mayhem. So
Yeah. In a world now where I think
everything travels
it just
quickly.
goes so quickly. It
Yeah.
can't be buried. It can't live beneath the surface. It is exposed. It's responded by everyone. It's a
The narrative
can
can get
grow.
it can
Yeah,
grow,
it can grow.
and then there's misinformation traveling around, and then you don't know what to believe. It's really, I think that's one of the most challenging parts of running public companies.
2 more questions. Luke, you're going to start.
Okay.
These are meant to be a little quicker. And we're going to go clockwise. And then we're going to go counterclockwise for the third one. That's the plan. What is your biggest, the next one's a little more positive. What is your biggest insecurity as CEO? Right now.
Like today, you mean?
Just, oh, well,
Or like,
maybe
you
not
know,
today, but, you know, generally in this moment, other than being on the CEO Roundtable.
Yeah, I'm like on camera. about that. You know, I think it changes over the years. Like at the beginning, like I was the only employee, and I'm like, I don't know how to manage people or do any of those activities that are going to be required to scale this company up. I think the thing that I actually always am a little bit insecure about is like the food itself. Like, is it actually good? Do people like it? Like, you know, like, so I, every time, even, you know, 12 years later, and we've sold millions of meals, and I'll like do a discussion where people are eating the food as part of that. And I'm like, do they like it? Is it good? Because how many of these bars are empty? Are they full? So I think it's
I can
still
relate to that.
just very much that need to make a really great product and like deliver on it every day, and have that be out there for everybody to try and have a reaction to.
And so that
You
still
guys can't get
resonates.
the same answers.
No, I know.
No, sometimes like my daughters will leave a bite of waffle on their plate in the morning. I'm like, was there something wrong with it?
What the hell?
My own daughter. This is my first rodeo in like every sense of the word. Like I've never been a CEO before. I've never been in this industry before. And so I think that comes along with its own special set of insecurities. But the way I've tackled it is I have very intentionally surrounded myself with people who know a lot more about all of it than I do. And I try to be a student every day and learn as much as I can.
Nice.
I would say, if I'm being honest, I mean, I'm part of a family lineage, so you have sort of the weight of 3 other generations before that did amazing things and built amazing things. So the imposter syndrome sort of sits beneath the surface, but you know, every day you try to learn from them and what they did and what made them successful, but also really carve your own way. And so that's sort of my constant insecurity in not trying to fill the shoes, but sort of, you know, put on a new set of shoes.
A more like tactical one is probably public speaking. So like doing this is, I'm out of my comfort zone. But I think probably a deeper one I would say is I tend to forward look a lot, and I always think about when might there come a time such that I might not be the best person to run the business based on, I don't even know, but I think about that from time to time. Like, oh, we've gotten to this stage and I've been able to get us here. Will the next stage, will I be well suited for it? Will I be able to learn quickly enough? Will I be able to have the skill sets necessary to do the role well? Will I want to? Like, I don't know. So it's always just like a little nagging thought in the back of my head, but I generally squash it. So,
I mean, mine is that I'm going to let the people down that believe in us. So as a startup and as we get going and as you have franchise partners, you sell a dream, and you're selling this dream that they're going to better their lives if they come in and be part of your organization or a franchisee. And so my biggest insecurity is that we will let them down and that they won't achieve what I've promised them. especially my employees. I've sold them where we're going to go. And so if I let them down, they all could have taken better jobs. They came here because of where we're going. So that's the biggest thing that worries me.
All right, we're coming right back to you. Final question. And I want you all to get deep emotionally. What does, as a leader, as a business leader, I see a lot of business leaders nowadays, and personally, I don't think many of them have as much humility as I would like, as someone who consumes, like, say, business media. So what does humility look like in leadership look like to you?
I mean, being as real and caring about what you do every day and not putting on an act. Leading by true example. So in the restaurant industry, most CEOs don't know how to go in and turn on their restaurant or operate their restaurants. To me, I can go into every one of my brands and I can run the restaurant as good as any GM. And I love doing that, and I love being in the field. That is the area where I think is the most important, to actually be authentic to what you're doing and not trying to be something that you're not. And CEOs tend to forget the fact that you started at the bottom, and you started as a workhorse, and then they think they're too good for those jobs, and that's not the case. We have to be willing to be that person and know what our dishwasher is doing, know what our factory worker is doing, and being able to be there with them and help them when they're having hard days. They struggle more than we ever will. And having that compassion or helping them, that's what it's about. And my team laughs at me because I'll get up and I'll tell stories about things we do, and they're all that matters. That's what drives us, and having that friendship and responsibility is what is important.
Yeah, I love that answer, especially leading by example. Humility to me, I think, approaching every situation and person as though you can learn from them, because you genuinely can. So that's a big part of what I do. No matter who you are, what you've done, I can always learn something from someone. So I'm constantly in that mode, and that's the way that I collaborate with my team. I ask a lot of questions, and I'm there to learn from them as much as they might be there to take direction from me. So that's a really big one, low ego, and then serving others. Like, I am ultimately there to help other people succeed. I'm not here to do anything else other than help the team succeed. So I'm constantly asking, what can I do? How might I help you? What role do you want me to play in this conversation? How do you want me to approach this with you? So I would say servant leadership, I think, and always learning from others in every situation.
Really well said. I would agree with everything said to date. I mean, I think for me, approachability, my dad was sort of the example of that, especially, you think of the archetype of the sports owner, sitting in an ivory tower. And I mean, it's extreme in some examples. So he really broke that mold by sitting with the fans, and, despite being in a beautiful suit and tie, he made himself, one of the people. And so I try to live like that every day and just be approachable. And everyone's, whether you're, a fan, or whether you're sweeping the floor, or whether you're an executive or a sponsor, everyone gets treated the same way. And I'm just a guy, whatever.
He introduced us, and he was very kind to my brother and I.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was really nice.
Yeah.
Knowing what you don't know and not being afraid to ask for help. And I think that goes across all levels of the organization, whether it's your own team members or even with investors. Like, if an investor tells me something and I don't know what they're talking about, I'm not afraid to say, I don't know what you're talking about, and ask them for help. And I think ultimately the organization's so much stronger if the leader knows what they don't know.
Luke, you're screwed. There's only so
Yeah.
many. Yeah. Hit us up with the best one.
I was through the last time. You're
Ditto.
I have more time to think about it, so hopefully that helps. But I think in our business, I started at the beginning and, chopping lettuce, driving the truck, and I still did a lot of that for many years, like 4 or 5 years at the beginning. So kind of what helps is my job. We talk about like how hard it is to be a founder and all these crazy problems that we have to solve. And I'm like, I stand for 10 hours on your feet in a room that's 35 degrees and chop lettuce. And then let's talk about like a hard job. And I think that's very motivating to make sure that I'm doing my best work to support that team, like a lot of you said. And so it doesn't feel that hard to be honest. And then I also have a wife who really likes to remind me when I am doing dumb things or making mistakes. And that's kind of how my executive team is too. So just being really open to that feedback and letting people know that you're not upset when they're pointing out the things that you're doing wrong, because it's really what's going to make us a better team. So it's like the combination of just the everyday like work that we're doing. My job is the least important job there. If you're not like making the food and delivering the food, we don't have customers buying the food. And so that's what we really try to focus on. And then I have a lot of people to remind me that I should keep being pretty humble. So
I love it. Well, I appreciate you all so much. I'm fans of all your businesses. So thank you for joining today. This was really fun. I hope you all enjoyed it. Yeah.
Thanks, definitely.
End of episode 2.
All right.
What'd you think?
So fun.
It was great. Yeah.
Yeah.